Hey, everybody. Welcome to the I Am a Woman podcast. I am so excited to let you guys know my book, I Am a Woman, Taking Back Our Name, is out. Okay. This helps people understand what is going on with the kids and in the schools and why it is important for us to stand up for biological girls in women's spaces. So make sure to order that at the link in my bio. I am super excited to have one of the forerunners of this movement on the show today. You know, it really is going to take all of us, and it's going to take all of us from different perspectives, different backgrounds, with different ideologies or just different viewpoints to address this topic of men in women's spaces and how it affects all of us. So I want to welcome Julie Lane onto the show today. Julie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Julie Lane is the co-founder of a nonpartisan group called Women Are Real. I love that title. And she is fighting on all kinds of legislative fronts to protect women's sports, spaces, children, and parents. So, Julie, the tagline for Women Are Real is this. I was looking at your website. It says, women deserve safety in sports, locker rooms, prisons, and shelters. Tell me more about your mission and how you got involved in it.
Yeah, our mission is really to empower women to fight against this crazy ideology that's spread across the Bay Area. Is horrible, but all of California, and California sort of, sets the pace for the rest of the country. So we've got legislators here that are writing trans positive ideological laws that are cutting off parental rights. They are ending up having kids cutting off healthy body parts. They're supporting this in schools and pushing it in schools and suing people who disagree with them and cutting off free speech at the same time. So there's a lot of issues. I got into this kind of through the sports angle. I was a college athlete. I'm a lesbian. I've been erased in that in many ways too, and told that I should like penises or else I'm a bigot. Oh
my goodness. What?
Oh yeah, the lesbian dating acts all have men on them, and we're all told that we have a problem and we're bigoted if we don't want to sleep with men pretending to be women, and they call them trans women or girls.
Wow, Kathleen Stock talks about this in her book. I think it's called Material Girls, why reality matters for feminism, something like that. She talks specifically about what's going on with lesbian spaces. And so this is something most Christians do not know about because it's just not a main topic of conversation. But you're actually saying that even on your dating apps, there are men who are claiming to be women, and they are saying that you're bigoted if you don't want to have sex with them.
Yeah, they want to break the quote unquote cotton ceiling because lesbians like comfortable underwear in their cotton generally. So they want to break that barrier and have sex with us. And that it's an erotic, fetishized, disgusting thing that these men are doing. Not all men, of course. It's only the creepy ones that want to get into our spaces that are doing this. But at this point, we have to let everybody in. I've been kicked off of lesbian dating sites for saying biology is real and it matters. So free speech is gone. Just being able to have your own sexuality and mind your own business and try to find a date, it's gone. You said lesbian spaces, and there aren't any anymore. It's almost impossible unless you're having a private party in your house to have a lesbian space. So the bars are gone. A great old women's bathhouse in San Francisco that was for everybody, not just lesbians, is gone because men demanded entry into that as well.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So your fight is across a lot of different fronts. I found this very interesting. You were saying that the Women Are Real organization is 65% Democrat, 56% former athletes, 45% lesbian or bisexual, 17% educators, and only 5% Republicans. So for the most part, these are left-leaning women who are saying that this has been taken too far. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And, the numbers keep changing because I am a registered Democrat. I am not going to vote for Joe Biden. I don't know anybody that's going to vote for Joe Biden or any other Democratic ticker, really. And I'm not saying that's a monolith, but it's quite common to have that. So I would, the 5% Republican might be different now. There's probably quite a few of us that will vote Republican or vote, independent or something like that. So it's shifting as we learn more and more and more and more grievances occur that are really harming women and children and vulnerable people. We can't put up with it anymore. We know which side's pushing it, and it's embarrassing.
No, it is. It is embarrassing, I think, for people that have voted Democrat their entire life and are saying, when did you decide to, reassign a new language to the word woman? I always tell people like Merriam-Webster dictionary has changed, you guys. Like Cambridge Dictionary has changed the definition of male and female and man and woman, and that affects future generations and their identity, but it also affects law and policy. What is happening with these issues in California? A lot of my listeners are in Texas. We actually have listeners in many, many countries, I think 57 countries all over the world. What is going on with California when it comes to law and policy? When it comes to men and women's spaces, locker room sports, update us, help us understand what exactly is going on there, because the same thing is not happening in every state.
Right. Well, I'll people can look this up, but I'm quite sure that I think it was 2007 when they decided to allow gender to be whatever somebody wanted it to be and compete in high school sports in California as whichever gender you wanted. Nobody was doing it back then, as far as we know. But now there's an explosion of it. So California did that on its own. Biden is changing the Title IX stuff right now, and it comes into effect in August. He's saying gender trumps sex, basically. So that's women's protected spaces and rights in scholarship and in sports, federally funded, is gone. So any man can just say he's a woman and self-identify as that, or any boy can do the same thing, and it's happening everywhere. And they can compete against the girls. And of course they're going to demolish the girls because they have testosterone advantage that they've had from birth. So California started with these laws a really long time ago, and they're enforcing those laws, and they're writing more laws now because of bigots like me. And it's absolutely terrible. They are misogynists. The worst guy in the world is Scott Wiener, and he's right in my district in San Francisco, and he's written the majority of these laws. It's been a fire hose of terrible laws that hurt women, including SB 132, which allows men to self-ID into women's prison. So women are getting raped. There's a lawsuit about that right now. It boggles the mind that we're not saying about this, and that we haven't always known that, unfortunately, men have a much higher rate of aggression and sexual violence. And now we put that all aside and pretend that these men who are creepy and want to get into our spaces so they can be disgusting with us, that they're okay. They're not okay. And it's not okay for women to have to put up with us.
Well, I love that you're standing up for women to put boundaries around themselves. And, as J.K. Rowling says, it's not hateful to say that there is a difference between men and women. Men are 98 to 99% of sex offenders are male. And men can punch twice as hard as a woman. Their upper body strength is 2/3 times that of a woman's upper body strength. And so the idea that it is okay to bring men into girls' or women's spaces is such a lie. So do you consider yourself part of the LGBTQ pride movement? Because it feels like the pride movement has become about something very, very different than it was a long time ago. It used to be about gay marriage or, not being persecuted against and so forth because of your sexuality. But today it feels like it is moved to brainwash the children into sexual identities and gender identity when they're super young. So where do you see yourself in that movement?
Right. I would say that language is a huge problem, and that people have been changing language around all of this, around sexuality, around people's rights, around who's a man and who's a woman for many years. And some of us we really just got equality. You know, I don't care about marriage equality. I'm never going to get married, but I did care about discrimination in housing and employment and all that stuff. And I did fight for that stuff back in the 90s in college in Colorado.
Sure.
I've watched, but then, you know, you get comfortable. I live in San Francisco. It's pretty gay friendly. But then suddenly they add the T on to lesbian, gay, and bisexual. And then suddenly we have trans added on. I'm like, what's that? But I guess it doesn't affect me. There's not that many. And we all thought they were just gay men that did drag shows. That's who we thought the T was.
Mm.
And then they added LGBTQ, queer theory is the root of all these problems. They are all about breaking down boundaries. You mentioned boundaries at the beginning. We used to have boundaries. That's what women's bathrooms are for and men's bathrooms are for, to create a boundary so we could be safe in a space, and we would look out for each other in that space. And so if a man came in, we could scream and get him arrested. Now we get arrested and scream. So boundaries are a huge problem. And I had a child in the meantime. You know, and in San Francisco, it's very expensive. Yeah, like it's a lot of survival just to stay here, you know. So I didn't have a lot of time to be involved. And also pretty much all the gay and lesbian organizations welcomed trans and welcomed queer theory. And somehow they think asexuality belongs in that hodgepodge of letters. I don't understand how that's a sexuality. That's just low sex drive. Like, why is that even in there? None of it should be attached to lesbian, gay, and bisexual. These are sexualities. We're pretty much hardwired. Sometimes we come to it later in life, but these are not choices we're making and identities. This is who we are. This is how we're wired and who we're attracted to. And it's not that confusing. We just want to be left alone, really. It's the queer people and the trans people that want all this attention and all these extra rights, because it's a direct conflict of rights to have trans, especially men, taking over women's rights and women's spaces and protections. So the real problem is that co-opting of language that nobody really paid much attention to, and suddenly here we are. It's terrifying and horrifying.
So, you said that queer theory is sort of at the root of all of this. What exactly is that? Does that have to do with gender identity?
Yeah, queer theory, it's literally the breaking down of boundaries in society. And they think it's kind of like revolution. It's like we have to break it all down in order to rebuild how we want it to be, or there shouldn't be boundaries. And so there's a lot of pedophiles that have written a lot of queer theory, like Foucault, Judith Butler. Like, I don't know what her deal is. She thinks incest is okay. So there's a lot of really creepy people that have been putting this propaganda out for years. Mm-hmm. And people who think they're really smart have bought into it, and they're really not very smart. They bought into a really faulty ideology that's harmful to a lot of vulnerable people.
Yeah, it is really true. What do you think about gender ideology? Which is, let me just explain to my listeners, my understanding of gender ideology is that every person has a gender that could be different than their biological sex. And this is what is being taught to children in schools in California and in many, many, many cities and states throughout the United States, as well as throughout the world now. So as a lesbian and as a woman who's standing up for women's spaces, what is your take on gender ideology? Is it legit?
No, of course not. They're using what's the word, when it's just ridiculous stereotypes that they're using to say, well, this girl's playing with trucks, she could be a boy. This boy's playing with dresses, he could be a girl. And they're telling these kids that, and it's extremely confusing. It's almost like childhood development has been thrown out. Like, I got a teaching certificate so I could teach for a while, and I had to take childhood development. And a big part of that was understanding what stage these kids are at so you can deal with them and manage them. Adolescents, their brains are exploding. You know, there's a lot of changes, and it's a huge portion of being a human to go through puberty and to have sort of like your brain being challenged and forming and maturing. And these kids are being cut off from that now with puberty blockers, which is really affecting their pituitary glands, and it affects them forever. It's not a pause button. So people have been lied to by doctors, by medical associations, by their parents who are threatened that their kid's going to commit suicide unless they change who they are. Nobody can change their sex. There's absolutely nothing anybody can do about it except have some good talk therapy. Talk through, why does it bother you? Or, hey, you know what? It's okay to play with trucks or dresses. It's okay. Like we all get to try different things, and it doesn't mean you're a different sex. So gender ideology to me is it's personality traits. It's also weaponized. It's gone way too far, way too early. Like, nobody matures in their mid-20s for real in their brain. And all these interventions that are supposedly gender care, they're ruining people's bodies, and people are having major regrets. They end up sterilizing themselves, because if you go on puberty blockers, 99% of them go on to cross-sex hormones, which does sterilize you one way or the other. Testosterone is carcinogenic for women, so they have to get their uterus removed so they don't get uterine cancer. So they're sterilized. Men get their private parts chopped off because they think that's going to help their mental health issue. And it does not. All you're doing is adding physical trauma on top of a mental illness issue. So I think it's all bunk. I don't even like to use the word gender. I'm a sex realist is what I say. I try anyway. It's hard. It's in, a lot of people fighting this they say they are gender critical. And I think gender is just a bad word, and it's leading us down a really bad path as a society.
Yeah, I do agree with you. When I studied the history of the word gender for writing this new book I've written, I Am a Woman, I discovered that word had been hijacked. The definition of gender had changed. It's now many hundred words. If you look up the word gender in Merriam-Webster's dictionary in 1990, when I was using my dictionary in high school and college, it was 15 words. Last I checked, it was over 900 words to describe the word gender in the online dictionary. So Julie is very much right that a lot of it has to do with language and changing the language to teach children that they can choose a gender opposite of their biological sex. My personal opinion is the kids who are most at risk is kids that could potentially be same-sex attracted later in life, right? Boys that are drawn to dolls, they don't like sports, girls that prefer sports. Like you're saying, they're taking character traits and behaviors of children and telling them that is their identity. Do you think, Julie, that potentially same-sex attracted kids who may grow up later to be gay adults are actually the ones that are being slaughtered on the altar of this lie?
100%. I mean, it's 80 to 90%. They've I don't know how they proved that or how they studied it, but that's what they figured were actually gay kids. At the Tavistock Clinic in England, that's what all their clinicians were saying, and they were either getting fired or shut up for saying that. It's a huge money-making pharmaceutical thing that they're doing. These are probably at least, it's going to keep going up, but millions and millions of dollars per child who starts down this path. They don't give them real therapy. All they do is affirm them. And they threaten the parents with suicide, that the kid's going to commit suicide. I would have been one of those kids. That's one of the reasons I'm so involved in this fight. I was very much a tomboy, very much the athlete. I played college sports. I did the whole thing. And they would have said, maybe you're a boy. And if I was young enough to be confused by that, maybe I would have gone and said, hey, Mom, maybe I'm a boy. What do you think? She told me recently that she would never have gone along with it. And I'm like, thank you, Mom. But a lot of people think they're really smart, and they think they're reading the New York Times and learning all the facts about trans ideology, and they think they're doing the right thing, and they're not. Like, wake up, use your eyeballs, use common sense, think about childhood development. And all these medical associations that are just lying to their doctors, they're lying to the parents, they're lying to the kids because it's money.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so steeply baked in to our laws and to our policies. Even therapists are not allowed to counsel a child in the truth. So if a child comes to a therapist and that child says, I'm trans, I'm non-binary, I'm born in the wrong body, which, by the way, is one of the ugliest lies of this entire movement. I hate that lie, I'm born in the wrong body. I mean, I have spent my entire career in ministry helping girls to recover from eating disorders, sexual abuse, speaking to women in prisons, helping girls who believe that they're ugly, that they're not good enough, that they don't match the media's image of beauty. I mean, that has been my entire career as a writer and a speaker and a mentor to these girls. And to think that I would ever uh, accept the lie that children are born in the wrong body is ludicrous. It is an evil thing to say to children. You would never say that to a child who had Down syndrome. You would never say that to a girl who felt ugly in her body, because it teaches them that there's some kind of a mistake. So, Julie, from that single lie, right, comes a whole series of events. And I'm so grateful for you. I'm so glad that you are speaking up and really representing the lesbian community, because your rights are also being attacked. Women in prison's rights are being attacked. How do we fight back against this? Because it is deep, right? It is really deep. With Title IX. Maybe do this. Explain Title IX and tell me, how do we fight back on a local level? How do we all use our voices to fight this?
Well, I mean, I would say the best way to fight back and help with that lawsuit is to donate to Icons, because they're pouring all their resources into the lawsuit, and that's gonna be nationwide. So it's gonna help everybody eventually. Probably it'll end up going to a very high court to be decided. And I don't know how they can decide that men should be able to play women's sports. I just don't get it. It's also about privacy and the fact that they've violated these girls' privacy by sending men into their locker room without even warning them in the nude. So that's what part of the suit is about. Locally, we find out about boys that are participating against girls in high school sports, or mostly just high school sports. And then, the national news finds out about the ones who actually have women's scholarships in college already. So they're already stealing from women. These are scholarships set aside for women via Title IX. And since they have a gender identity that's a woman, they take the scholarship. And of course they're going to win, because they can jump way higher, and they never get rid of their testosterone advantage of height, strength, speed, all those things. And women are getting injured as well. We've gotten multiple concussion cases and broken hands by men or boys hitting balls at girls who are not prepared for that strength and that power. So I would say network with other parents, find out who's doing it. I mean, reach out to us. We will show up and protest. They can't do anything to us, but they can do something, and they have done something to anybody that's complained within that school district. Mm-hmm. So they have kicked girls out of all athletic competition for the rest of their high school careers, and they've kicked out the entire high school from the conference for somebody saying, I don't agree with men or a boy playing in our sports. So that's happened, and it continues to happen. They've written it into the federation laws or their regulations that if anybody speaks out against this, they're off the team. They're out. They can lose scholarships. They can lose all their ability that they've trained for their whole lives. So it's a touchy thing. The more of us that speak out, the less the burden on everybody else. Mm-hmm. So we've done it at multiple track and field events, cross country events. Sometimes the boys don't end up showing up because they know we're going to be there, which is a win for us. It's a win for the girls. Mm-hmm. We're there to speak up for the girls. We're not anti-boys participating. They just participate with the boys. That's all that has to happen. Men and boys and coaches need to be open and say to those boys, you come participate with us. That's your strength level. You're a male. This is your category. You do not participate on the girls' team. That's what needs to happen. But the coaches will get fired if they say that. So they've really shut down our ability to make good decisions and to help kids and to do the right thing.
Well, that's what's disappointing, is that the coaches, the administrators, the teachers, and the parents are not all standing up against it. And so you have they're putting people in fear, which, as I explain in my new book, I Am a Woman, you guys, trying to help everybody understand how thought reform works. Okay. Thought reform works this way. And this is the way that China brainwashed their people. If you speak up, you're persecuted, you're canceled, you lose your job. But right now, it seems to me, Julie, that more coaches need to be willing to lose their jobs for these kids and for these girls. I mean, you kind of have to lay down your life and say, I am called to protect the girls as a man, as an administrator, as a coach, as a father, as a parent. my entire role is to protect, and so be it if my job is on the line. Really. I mean,
Yeah, that's the same, unfortunate, it's the same principle of people lying about childhood development, that it's okay to introduce this stuff to transitional kindergartners. It's not okay. It's confusing. I don't actually blame the boys, although ones in high school ought to know better. They can Google what's been happening in their, if they're participating in girl sports, they should be able to figure out that people are upset about it. Although all the news is siloed too. Like no mainstream media will cover us. All they'll do is promote trans rights all the time. And I will say that I'm a slightly hopeful because some of the Democratic politicians have stopped promoting this as their number one agenda item in their reelection campaigns, like Newsom, although he's still doing it behind the scenes. We get an occasional article in Reuters or New York Times or maybe the Washington Post. I'm not sure if they've done anything yet, but like once a year they write something that's critical of this trans ideology and the harms that it's causing in sports and locker rooms and everywhere else. And the research has been done over in England on the Tavistock, and they're shutting down all puberty blockers. It's illegal to give them to any kids now, private or in their health system. And in Scandinavian countries, I think France has also cracked down a little bit. So there is some hope that there's a little bit of a tidal wave of sanity coming, but it's taking too long. And there are so many laws in California alone that have been written that are going to have to be changed eventually. We're never going to give up this fight. And even if they try to shut us up and arrest us or try to beat us up, which they try to do sometimes, I'm not going to shut up. Are you crazy? Like, this is a battle for our humanity. Like, you can't have a society or humanity without males and females and knowing which one's which. And it's lying. It's just lying, outright lying. And I think it's nefarious. I think the queer theory stuff is nefarious. I think the pharmaceutical companies' involvement is nefarious. And I think politicians like Scott Wiener are nefarious. They got to know. He's a gay man. He knows he's attracted to men. Like, what's he going to do? Sleep with a woman who says she's a man? Like, he's not going to do that. He knows, but he's doing this. And like you said, the worst thing you can tell a kid is you were born in the wrong body. That's cruel. And that's what these people are telling kids. And they're telling the parents, you better do something about it because it's not okay. That's crazy. My mom supported me no matter how I looked, no matter what I wanted to do. And that's what parents have to do. And if somebody gets in the way of that, the parent stands up for the kid because it's childhood development. They can't do it all on their own. Parents have to take a stand and they have to be sane about the kids they put into the world. You can't abandon them to a crazy cult at this point.
yeah, it does have so many cult-like properties, and one of the Lifton's 8 criteria for thought reform and mind control, one of them is called mystical manipulation, in which the media limits the information that you receive. And what is happening is the media is limiting, just like you're saying, they're not reporting about the children whose bodies are being mutilated on the altar of this lie. Giving these puberty blockers to children in their formative years is actually an experiment on humanity. It is a crime against humanity. And the longer it goes on, not only do these kids become medical patients for life, but they become infertile and sterile. They lose their sexual function and they lose their minds. Okay, they lose their minds. Now, let me just say this really quick about female genital mutilation. The feminists used to stand up against female genital mutilation, and there's a ton of research on what that did to the 200 million women and girls in the world who experienced female genital mutilation. They went crazy. Okay, our bodies are not wired for that. These girls experience PTSD, no sexual function, depression, suicide, self-harm, anxiety disorders beyond belief. And yet, what is making me so mad is these feminist mantras that said it's my body, it's my choice, and all of this. And we're now transferring that to giving little children rights to make lifelong medical decisions about their bodies. Julie, how can we get involved with Women Are Real? How, I want to lock arms with the other organizations of women who are standing up against this. And this, I want you to tell me about more about Women Are Real, but I want to say something to my Christian audience. Yes, the Bible teaches that we are to protect the children at all costs. Absolutely. But this is a topic where here we have lesbian women and Christian women like me. We are standing together in this. We're standing together on behalf of the children. This is not a right or left issue. This is a humanitarian issue, and the kids' lives are at stake. Okay, tell me more about Women Are Real, how we can get involved.
Yes, I 100% agree with you. And I would say even 3 or 4 years ago, I was in my own Democratic lesbian silo of only listening to MSNBC or only listening to CNN. And I never would look at Fox News or I wouldn't want to hear from Trump. I still don't want to hear from that guy, but you know what I mean? Like, I can actually be open to many ideas now. I work with many Christian women now, and I love them so much. Like, it's great to be on the same side and to feel that camaraderie and an understanding of why we're all here, even if we have different ways of living, maybe, or maybe even different beliefs in other areas. At least we know what a man and a woman is, and we know how society runs and how it should run and how culture maintains itself. And this is really destructive. And I think we all know that. So, and I learned a lot of that when I went to the Icons conference, because they're nonpartisan as well. And they had people from across the spectrum in science, religious people, conservative lawyers, people fighting this already. And conservatives have been at this a lot longer than any of us liberals have, because we didn't know there was a problem. So thank you for waking us up. Reach across the aisle, read things you wouldn't normally read. You got to dig deeper. Womenarereal.org is our website. And on there, it's not really radical at all. It's just basically talking about what you and I are talking about. There are articles, there are statistics, there are resources. And I think it's sending people there if they don't know anything about this, or sending their friends there if they don't know anything about this, is a great foray into this. You can reach out to us. There's a contact button on that webpage. We can try to hook people together and network people that don't have anybody else to talk to about this or feel stuck or need help. We know attorneys, we know some therapists that, won't indoctrinate your kids. We have a lot of ROGD parents that's rapid onset gender dysphoria. So these are kids that never, even as little kids, were playing with the wrong things. They just saw something online and decided, well, that's a magic pill, I'll do that. And so it's a horrifying thing. This is ruining families. It's destroying parental relationships with their kids, because these kids are encouraged to cut their parents off if they don't fully affirm them. I can't even imagine.
What you're saying is so true. It is ruining families. As some families are saying, if you do not call my child by a plural pronoun or by this new non-binary or whatever identity, you're dangerous, you're unsupportive, you're not loving. But it's not loving to lie to children. It is not loving to tell a girl that she can be a boy and that a boy can be a girl, or that you can even be neither. That's not loving either, because it's lying to the kids and it leads them down a very harmful pathway. Really quick, can you summarize the Title IX situation for my listeners? I want to make sure you brought it up and talked about it before in this lawsuit. Explain to everybody what Joe Biden has done with Title IX and what this lawsuit is really about.
Yeah. Okay. On day one of Joe Biden's presidency, he did an executive order to change Title IX from being focused on sex, which is for females, to gender identity, protecting gender identity and sex, which they cannot be combined, because you can't have a man say he's a woman and protect females. It erases that protection. Right. So he did it on day one, and then they realized that was actually not legal, because it's something about how the law was written where it has to actually pass through Congress or something like that. I'm not positive about all this. All I know is that he couldn't do it. Okay. So then they did go through the process, and they got over 200,000 comments from people like me, maybe people like you, who said, this is wrong. Do not do this. It's not fair to women and girls.
Mhm.
And they spent a long time hemming and hawing about it. But they ended up releasing it maybe a couple months ago or a month ago, saying they're going to do it anyway. And they left out sports. And they thought they were really clever because election season's coming and people are really mad about sports. They didn't put sports in their changes. But it doesn't matter. It's across institutions that get federal funding. And it covers locker rooms and bathrooms and anywhere where women need protection and safety. They don't have it anymore. So they thought they were being sneaky. They're going to try to do that if he wins. They're going to try to add sports to it. I mean, there needs to be an uprising, and I hate to say that, but since we don't have media coverage, and since people never have really listened to women very much, and it's a very misogynistic, horrible movement, we got to do something. Men got to step up. Women got to step up. Parents got to open their eyes. I've started this new thing in my head that I hope people will join and just use. I say I'm part of the coalition of sane people.
Mhm.
Like, just say you're part of the coalition of sane people, and people will be like, "Oh, you are? Well, what's that mean?" That just means that I know what a woman is and what a man is, and how we procreate, and how sex is real, and how women need protections, and they always have needed protections. And Joe Biden has taken that away. I'm part of the coalition of sane people. So,
Good. I'm in the club.
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
in the club.
Right, I love it.
Yeah, it's just where I draw the line. I've done a lot of speaking in prisons. I'm very, very sensitive to women in prison because of my heart for them. And the largest Texas women's prisons, well, all five of them are within 3 hours of my house. And so I've been to all of them. And I've spoken to those women, and most of them have been victims of sexual violence. And the idea now that a man could be a woman and we need birth control in the women's prisons to quote unquote protect them. No, you protect them by having boundaries around them. You protect them by putting gates around them. They have been victims of enough. And the bottom line is, Julie, if we do not stand up now, it will be our granddaughters and grandsons that will be left with the fallout. And my personal opinion is that it is our job because this happened on our watch. Would you agree? I mean, I don't think the kids, like, I'm so happy for Riley Gaines, right? A young woman who is leading the way. But in my view, this is not even the younger girl's fight. This is our fight because it happened on our watch.
It's 100% the adult's problem to deal with. And I'm so tired of men, especially saying, well, the girls just shouldn't compete. Well, what are you losing out? Are you losing out when you tell girls not to compete? Because they're losing out. And like I said, they will lose their ability to compete down the road.
Yeah.
So it's the adults that have to stand up. I don't care if I get arrested. I don't care if I get kicked out of gyms and get assaulted, which has happened. If it raises awareness and more people will stand up and do the same thing, do it. Or have a private meeting with your athletic director. If enough people do that, they might think about it and they might push it up a level. But if all of us just go along with it or act like, oh, well, it's not hitting my kid right now, who cares? No, we're going to get hit hard, and we're really going to lose our democracy, our freedom of speech completely. We're going to lose our kids' autonomy and ability to grow up into healthy adults. We're already losing that. People are already losing that. Even one kid affected by this, or one girl not participating in sports because of this and self-selecting out of sports because she doesn't want to deal with this. Those are major losses. These are not okay things to do in our society, and people are just doing it like it's nothing. So we got to stand up, be public if you can.
I could not agree with you more. And I just want to encourage all of you guys out there listening to this today, take a stand. Take a stand. I always say, a wise woman takes a stand. And this is our moment. This is the Rosa Parks moment of our generation where she stood up and said, I'm not sitting in the back of the bus. And it's going to take all of us to stand up against this and stop this wave of gender ideology that is poisoning these kids' minds, turning them away from their biological bodies that I believe God made, and causing more mental distress, more under the guise of diversity and inclusion. So thank you so much, Julie, for being on the show today. I cannot thank you enough. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with my listeners before we sign off here?
Uh, I think just try to get involved, like we said. Look past the main things that Google's sending you because it's all pro-trans. You got to look past it. You got to find the people speaking out. I think, unfortunately, social media on Twitter is the best place, the best resource to find out what's actually happening around this stuff.
Yes.
Facebook will shut you down. I think Instagram and the other ones will shut you down. But so far, Twitter's mostly letting us tell the truth. And the
Yeah.
truth is all that really matters. Reality is all that really matters here. And we have to stand up for the vulnerable people that are getting really, really ruined by this.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And how can my listeners find you on Twitter?
We're under at Women Are Reels with an S on the end.
Okay.
Just at Women Are Reels because the other one was taken.
Absolutely. Okay. I will follow you. And I am also on Twitter now at I am a woman underscore US. I am a woman underscore US. That is my Twitter handle for our listeners. I've decided to venture into Twitter territory because this is not a time to be silent. This is a time to speak. Thank you so much, Julie, for being on the show and for your stance. I stand with you. I consider you a sister in this movement, and I'm excited to be part of the sane on the sane bus.
Yes, we're the coalition of the sane people. We are it. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go. And she's right. I'm not backing down either. I will not back down in my lifetime on this topic, and you shouldn't either. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show. Remember, I am a woman and my name means life. You can order my book, I Am a Woman, at the link in the show notes. Make sure to do that. We're sending Amazon a message that we're no longer going to brainwash our kids with gender ideology. We're going to teach the girls that women are life givers. That is the meaning of our name, and we are to use our voices to stand up against injustice. You guys have a great day.